guys, welcome to another session of Educators Roundtable. Tonight, we are launching our new series. Our new series is called Rip from the Headlines. Globally, there's so much happening in education. We didn't want to miss not sharing this moment with you guys so that you can have an opportunity to see what's happening globally around the world. And so tonight, joining me, of course, we have Shannon and we also have Mike. So, hey guys, I'm really excited about tonight. Are you guys ready to get started? We've got a lot to really hash through tonight.
Absolutely. I
Can't wait.
You know what? I'm going to say this right now. If you guys are watching for the first time, I want to say as a disclaimer, I do apologize if something that we've put together for tonight is offensive, because that's never, our intent to be offensive towards anyone. So I just want to say I do apologize if this is offensive. It was not intended to be that way. The expression that you guys are seeing now was basically intended to be a teacher who just got paint thrown all over in the classroom like she's going to war. So again, that's our disclaimer, and I will change it for next week because I don't want anyone to be offended. Okay, so let's get started, guys, from our Rip from the Headlines conversation. And this is our first batter up.
It's no surprise to anyone that we have a major teacher shortage this year. Teachers are walking out of schools this year at an alarming rate. And you want to know why? I'll tell you exactly why teachers are quitting. Coming home mentally, physically, and emotionally exhausted. Some teachers are coming home having endured being hit, kicked, bit, slapped by students. And we're exhausted to the point where we can't even take care of our own kids because we are so drained at the end of the day because of all the stuff we're dealing with at school this year. The kids this year, they don't know how to play with each other. They don't know how to stop playing with each other. They don't know how to sit down, be quiet, to not call their teacher's name 100 times. We have had to reacclimate them to being in school again. Some of them haven't been in school for 2 years. I don't understand why we're just picking back up business as usual. We are absolutely dog tired and exhausted. We have to do something because what we're doing is not working. We got admin and district officials shouting practice self-care while continually adding a million things to our plates. If y'all really cared about us practicing self-care, we wouldn't be made to feel bad when we need to take a mental health day or when we have to take a personal day off. I mean, you got teachers out here coming to school mentally sick, coming to school physically sick, because their admin make them feel bad if they have to miss a day because there's a teacher shortage. I shouldn't have to sacrifice my health because y'all don't have any teachers. Our prep time is gone because there's a teacher shortage and a substitute teacher shortage. So 9 times out of 10, we are having to cover a class during our prep period. So when am I supposed to lesson plan, grade these papers, get prepared for teacher observations? And I don't even know why y'all are still doing teacher observations. We've got kids missing an entire class period, missing the first part of class because they didn't have a bus driver to come pick them up because of the bus driver shortage. We got kids missing class, and we got parents that are upset with us as their teacher that they weren't in class. I can't control that they didn't have a bus driver to come pick them up. But all of these shortages, they are affecting these students' education this year. How do you expect us to teach and get our kids on grade level when half of our class is late because they didn't have a bus driver? And last but not least, teacher pay. Now more than ever, teachers are looking for a way to leave education, like exit stage left immediately. The situation is that dire. There are a lot more jobs that pay way better than education, and you don't have to deal with crazy parents and power-hungry admin or district officials that have not seen the broadside of a classroom in about 20 years. The sad reality is there are so many teachers in this country that can't afford to pay their bills because they make so little money being in education. I mean, the amount of teachers that have to work a second job just to be able to pay their bills, astronomical. So a lot of teachers are starting to realize the pay plus the amount of stress that we have to deal with, not worth it anymore.
Okay, guys, let's talk about it. I don't know. Like, is your first expression, does it take your breath away that a teacher sat in her car and vented possibly after work There's a baby seat in the back. So obviously she's a parent herself. So let's start with the first thing. Her first concern was what? She said kids are biting, kicking.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your thoughts on this, Shannon? You seem a little speechless. I've never seen you speechless.
There's a lot. There's a lot to unpack here, a whole lot. And I think, and let me start by saying, as a former teacher, I get it. And as a former principal, I get it. I could not imagine being in that role today. Just I had to think about all that they've seen, all that they've gone through. But let me also say this. These are unprecedented times for everyone. And right. I think about folks at the grocery store. I think about folks at restaurants and all of the essential workers that have kept us going throughout this past couple of years, and all that they've had to deal with as well. And so I would say that she's not alone in her thoughts. And I think she's got some valid points. And I also think that people, for the first time that I know of, had an opportunity to work from home in mass. And that's something that people aren't really quick to give up happily. So there's a lot there. We do pay teachers too little. There are some terrible administrators. There are a ton of supports that kids and parents and teachers need in order to be successful. There's a whole lot that's going on that needs to be addressed. But I saw it in her face, and I was like, oh, she's got her own children. She's struggling. She's working hard. Yeah. And I think, especially in this country, we absolutely underpay teachers. Teachers are not the heroes that the world. You go to another country and tell somebody you're a teacher, you're royalty.
You're like a rock star. So what are your thoughts when she made it clear at the end of her video, teachers are leaving at an alarming rate because there's so many other jobs that they can get because they don't have to deal with parents, students, and what did she say about administrators?
Power hungry.
Yeah.
Administrators that have not seen the broad side of the classroom in 20 years.
And I'm going to be honest with you, as a former science and math teacher and a former school leader and a former executive in a school district, she's correct. A lot of those people have not seen the classroom in 20 years. And other thing is, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think they should be doing classroom observations right now. It's unfair. It's mixed, especially now, not New York. New York, you guys have been in session the whole time. You're talking about school districts who have been, all of a sudden next week we're not there. But now we are. And then there's a shortage and you got to give up your prep. What are you observing? A teacher barely hanging on? What are we observing?
I think in that instance, I think if you're going to be in school, you got to be in school. And I think the purpose should be clear to everyone there that we're there to teach kids, to make sure that we provide for them socially, emotionally, behaviorally, the supports necessary in order to do so. Having said that, if you don't observe the work, how do you determine whether or not it's being done?
But at this point, what are you managing? So I'm just going to say, so Michael, I'm going to go to you because we have like 4 more things caught in the headline that I want to make sure we get to tonight. So Michael, what's your perspective on that teacher?
Well, first of all, I would say I would definitely want to tip my hat to her and all other teachers, administrators having to deal with students, deal with being in the classroom setting during pre and post pandemic, because we have no idea. Well, I personally have no idea. I talked to you a couple of times. I talked to you about becoming a substitute teacher, and then you kind of you started doing this series here. But definitely like not knowing like the mental duress, the need for was it mental health day, and then them feeling like or being treated as if what they do is not as challenging as they're presenting it to be.
Right.
She was saying that the power hungry administration, but just the fact that you have to go into your work environment, which under any other circumstance, that would not be allowed. but you have, students attacking teachers. Like she was saying, they were constantly calling you, having them needing to be reoriented, into the classroom. And none of that was considered. We just, we were off for 2 years, and we're, okay, you're going back. And there was no no break, no talk, no loss. So some kids lost both parents. They lost family members. And you've been isolated, literally, talking through Zoom, and now you're back to having to deal with the person outside of from behind the computer screen. So it's a lot different talking to someone on the computer screen or texting than physically having to see their physical response. Misinterpreting of signs, feeling ignored when the teacher is simply trying to manage a classroom that's, I believe, they're a little bit larger than they were.
Well, not just that, like she said, she made it clear these kids are getting reacclimated.
Yeah.
Just being in the class again. So there was no transition. So I totally agree. So what we're going to do, guys, we're going to commercial break, and then we're going to talk about our next headline, ripped from the headlines. And I'm going to tell you, this one right here is going to blow your mind. Folks, we'll be right back after this commercial. Okay, guys, welcome back. And we're getting ready to show you our next video. And we would love to hear from you. So if you have any comments, please leave your comments in the comment section, and we'll be happy to share your feedback.
Parents and civil rights leaders in Parker County are demanding a tougher response from the Aledo School District after finding out some students staged an online slave auction of minority students. Fox 4's Dion Anglin joins us now with details. Dion.
Well, some community leaders are getting involved in this Aledo ISD matter they consider disturbing and cause for concern, and that includes the local NAACP.
The Aledo ISD statement issued on Monday announcing disciplinary action at its 9th grade campus in wake of racist social media posts was not the district's first time to address the matter. The incident itself was a mock slave trade. Screenshots of the online post Fox 4 has chosen not to show. They include students bidding for their black classmates in what's referred to as an expletive auction. Fox 4 obtained the district's initial response to the student group posting. What some parents complained was a softball approach. It was a school news item dated the week of April 5th. Principal Carolyn Ainsley writes, "We had an incident of cyberbullying and harassment." It also focused on the difference between a bystander and upstander on social media, stating, "A bystander allows things like bullying to happen without speaking up, but an upstander has the character to speak up to the bully and or tell a teacher or administrator." On Monday, the district spoke of the incident in more specific terms, noting its racially offensive nature, and said disciplinary action was taken, though not detailing what type of punishment or how many students were disciplined.
Okay, guys, let's talk.
Wow.
So what's your first impression? And by the way, this is 2022.
My first question was, what part of the Deep South is this from? Like, that was my first question.
So you think it's from the Deep South?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, no.
So the first question I'm going to ask you, does it matter it's from the Deep South or regardless? Are you not appalled that white students decided to do an online auction?
No. So the being appalled goes without saying. What bothers me and what shocks me the most is the response. That kids would do something like this, I think, is more indicative of a community that is not distanced from slavery, right? I mean, so this had to be one of those states in my mind. However, the response was shocking and appalling.
It was definitely, and I just want to say I wasn't able to play all of the footage, but many of the African American families could not understand why more legal steps were not taken.
I mean,
because they literally took it's like taking our face and creating an online auction for other kids to buy us.
Okay, so, and there's a couple of things here. The conditions that exist in order for that to be a possibility within that district, that's a whole other conversation, right?
Oh, for sure.
But then, where's the response from the superintendent? Where's the response from the school board? Where are the expulsion hearings, the changes in policy? Where are all of the things that need to happen in order to ensure that it's made clear to this community and to these students that this is not to be tolerated? And like, you don't see any of that.
No. And I was shocked and appalled that the concept of this point, you doing a slave auction online in 2022 of your fellow classmates. It was appalling to me. And I'm really, honestly, I'm concerned about the kids, the minority students in that school district, and how they're feeling about this within their community. Michael, what's your thought?
But I was trying to figure, how did it even get to that point? Like, I don't like, no black child said, Mom, next week we're going to be doing an online auction. I'm going to be auctioned off. Like, it never, like, why? How did it, even get to the building of the site, the taking names, the pictures, however, it was put together. How did that happen? And no black mama was at the school like before it even got to that point, to the selling.
Well, the thing is, like you said, once kids recognized that this was happening is when everyone got involved, because they pulled the site down. And as the news communicated, they didn't want to even show you the online auction where this was occurring. But from my understanding, this had something to do with an assignment.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yes, this was yes.
Wait. So this wasn't an adult. Am I hearing you? That
it was related to an assignment, and not to push back on the teacher, but obviously there was a miscommunication in relation to the students who were not minorities creating an online slave auction. Literally, you called it an online slave auction, and you put African American children on that website to be purchased.
The conditions that have to be present for something like this to even occur in the first place. Could you imagine how traumatizing it is for a student, apart from that auction, to walk through that building? Because the conditions are there, right? For these children to be victimized.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Texas. Right outside of Dallas.
I just want to say, folks, we're not here to bash any state, any county, or anything like that. That's the reason why I'm not sharing what the locations are.
I'm not state bashing. I'm naming the location where this took place so that I can be real clear in my mind what states to stay kind of steer clear of.
Well, thank you so much, Belcher Group, for tuning in and watching us. She said, I read that and I was blown away. Also, Carlitos Way, thank you so much. She said, in the state where Ted Cruz is the representative for that state. I'm going to tell you.
I didn't know that this was going to go there. But You know what? I didn't even. I hadn't even. And yes.
Yeah.
And after his performance with the most recent justice hearings, that was he was the one that had the Kendi's book, right? Anti-racist baby.
Yep. It was very interesting.
Batting 1,000 these days.
All right, so guys, listen, we'll be right back after these commercials, and trust me, the next video rip.
I don't know if I can do this. It's just no. I don't, because all these emotions are coming up, and you know,
it's a lot of layers.
It's a lot of layers, and it's like we're managing it in real time. But yeah, this is really happening right now in education, guys. We'll be right back after these commercials. Okay, guys, welcome back, and we're going to get started. And again, if you've just joined us here on the podcast, we're actually looking at a lot of things have been posted in social media all over the world as it relates to education. And some of the things you may see may be a little shocking, but that's the reason why we're doing this. We want we want to be able to share with you what's happening out here in education. So here's our next video, ripped from the headlines.
If you would just get up and teach them instead of handing them a freaking packet, yo. There's kids in here who don't learn like that. They need to learn face to face. You're just getting mad because I'm pointing out the obvious. And you're choosing. No, I'm not wasting your time. I'm telling you what you need to do. You want kids to come into your class, you want them to get excited for this, you got to come in here, you got to make them excited. You want a kid to change and start doing better, you got to touch his freaking heart. Can't expect a kid to change if all you do is just tell him. You got to take this job serious. This is the future of this nation. And when you come in here, like you did last time, and make a statement about, oh, this is my paycheck, indeed it is. But this is my country's future and my education.
Can you go outside, please?
But there's a limit. When I'm not bitching, but simply making an observation.
Okay.
And now I will leave.
All right, guys. What are your thoughts?
He felt that at the end.
I'm gonna say I love that student.
Yeah,
that's just real talk. He was just like, dude, them handouts, we're not feeling them. And he said, you got to teach, you got to, from the heart. You know what I mean? So Shannon, you're looking like, what's happening?
Nope. You know what? I gotta. So I've seen this before, and
okay.
The young man is spot on in his statements. And I mean, I don't know if you heard the teacher's just language. I don't know if you saw where she was seated.
Yeah, she was like whatever. She was laid back. She didn't even move from her desk.
Generally, if there's a student that's saying something in the class, stopping the class, you got kids that are saying, "Come on, man, just leave," right?
Right.
Kids were like, "Right on, amen, brother." Like, yes, preach.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he spoke to so much. I mean, student voice, student choice.
Oh yeah.
Bringing excitement and joy into the experience, giving them work worth doing. Like, those are all things that teachers, effective teachers, do.
Yeah. Exactly. And Carlito's Way, thank you so much. She said, "Wow, did he say anything that wasn't true?" Glad he said it. Exactly. I mean, it was just real talk. So let me ask you a question. Were you surprised that the teacher was so nonchalant about the student really checking her on her not being an effective teacher when he said, "This is our nation." I was
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
wow, really? You're not going to stand up and say, well, what do you want me to do different? She was just basically like, get out my room.
Well,
Yeah.
she's not putting forth the effort to begin with. So,
Right.
I mean, to hear him, she's not going to, she just wanted him to leave. She probably didn't even process that part.
Right.
Wow.
I was astonished. Truly, I was astonished. And I'm going to tell you, it kind of took me to a whole different level of what's happening in the classroom right now in this moment. Just to
I
let
did
you
was just to contrast that teacher with the teacher that was in the car, and talking about
yeah,
being exhausted and being overworked, or being in a completely different, I'll say, classroom environment from what she was saying. Do you think that that had something to do with it? Because I mean, that teacher was, I mean, she was like the definition of apathetic. I mean, she was just, when are you leaving? Like she didn't, I don't think she turned around to acknowledge him. And as he was going on, it's like the more he talked about it, it's like he was like realizing what he was saying. Because by the time we got to the end, I was just like, whoa. And how are you not moved by a student who is, saying something like that?
Shannon.
So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Michael, especially. So I think that first teacher is actually putting the time and the effort in, because the first teacher's working. The first teacher, and let's be really clear, teaching is tough work in ideal times, and we're far from that today. And but the first teacher indicated, like, I'm planning these lessons, I'm working during my planning period, I'm putting in all this time and effort, and I'm struggling. And so she was able to acknowledge that. The second teacher doesn't even put the time and thought into planning, like engaging activities for students. It's just, here, take this worksheet and do what you need to do, and it's just minimal effort. So I think that the huge difference is probably the effort that they're putting into the endeavor.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that I do want to say when we look at teacher performance, where I was reflecting on what the first teacher said. 9 times out of 10, and this is the thing that kind of gets, there are certain teachers who just give 110 when they're in that classroom.
Yeah.
And if you got teachers like her, he was like, these handouts not working. You got handout kings and queens out there still to this day, and they used the pandemic to really push their I should say their platform on handouts. Like they just was like giving out more handouts. And now that you've got this hybrid version still in some school districts where teachers are teaching like 20 kids in a class, but like maybe 20 kids still at home, you're still pushing handouts. But in this particular case, a lot of school districts never send any kids home. New York is an excellent example of that. So they kept teaching. So again, you got to look at the teacher. So we're going to look at our next one, guys, which I think to me is a little bit outrageous. So let's take a look at this, ripped from the headlines.
California teacher is now on leave after this video went viral. The teacher appears to be explaining SOHCAHTOA, a term used to help memorize trigonomic functions, often criticized when paired with offensive native imagery. In the more than 2 minutes of video, which has now been viewed by millions online, the Riverside teacher is seen in a headdress made of paper feathers with imaginary tomahawks in her hands, hopping around the room and screaming. The video was filmed by a student in the class, according to family friend Akale Brown, who then clipped the video and uploaded it online.
How is that student doing? The student is very concerned, actually, for the well-being of the teacher. He's actually said he was happy that it happened to him. We're glad it happened with someone who was able to digest it instead of internalize it and go home and hurt themselves.
At one point, the teacher is seen jumping on top of desks and stomping before sitting atop her own desk and calling out to the, quote, water goddess.
Because obviously this is ridiculous.
We think of Native people as existing in these primitive past tense stereotypes.
Elizabeth Ellis is a Native woman and history professor at New York University.
And if you are expecting Native people to be running around in leather and feathers, it's hard to think of them in the contemporary moment. And this actually really limits our access to political power and to be taken seriously as Native people.
Neither the teacher nor the school where the incident allegedly occurred responded to NBC's request for comment. In a statement posted online, the Riverside Unified School District said, quote, "These behaviors are completely unacceptable and an offensive depiction of the vast and expansive Native American cultures and practices." The district says the teacher has been placed on leave as they conduct a full investigation.
I hope that they do some re-educating and that they make sure that something like this never happens again to a Native student.
All right, Priscilla Thompson joins us now on set. There are a lot of things confusing about that video. I think one of the main ones is it's not even a history lesson. It was a math lesson or a social studies. It was math, which is completely baffling. But you spoke to a lot of experts and some advocates, and they think something positive could actually come from this incident.
Right. They think this could be an opportunity to have constructive conversation around representation of Native American people and what that looks like in schools. And one of them also mentioned Halloween is right around the corner. We know there are going to be some folks out there who would probably like to dress up as a Native American, and this is an opportunity for them to perhaps rethink some of those decisions too.
Okay, Priscilla Thompson with that video and that story tonight. Priscilla, thank you.
Okay, guys, that actually made national news.
Follow today's top stories.
Again, I apologize for that came in national news. So first thing I'm going to say to you, that school district, it immediately came out with a statement in that case. But when it came to the African-American students being sold on an online slave auction, the school district did not respond with a statement immediately. That concerned me. It was like I was just comparing stories and outcomes. But I'm going to, let that go. I'm going to let you guys kind of, what are your thoughts, Michael?
Well, the one thing that struck me was that it was the student that said that I'm glad that it happened to me, who was able to process it, who was able to, report it, to the right people, versus, being someone else having a traumatic experience, walking away from it with a traumatic experience. And I was like, here it is yet again that the roles are reversed, and it's the students who are taking responsibility, and the teacher, is seen as incompetent, insensitive, and it's sad.
It really is.
I thought it was a history lesson, like math.
Oh no, she was a math teacher, and just to let you know, I've taught math,
and
I've never correlated that with teaching algebra, trigonometry, or calculus. But Shannon, what's your thoughts?
I think this is a classic example for that demonstrates the need for culturally relevant, culturally competent. Like, I'm not talking about like as a want, but as an absolute need for those students. There has to be a curriculum in place. There have to be people in place that present the material in ways that are inclusive. And what's so incredibly sad about this is that woman mocking that entire people wasn't even trying to be offensive, right? That's the really sad part. Like, I don't think that in her mind, she was the absolute villain here, right? No. Like causing great harm. Yeah. That having been said, and it keeps going, there is a level of mental illness that allows certain groups to think about people as these caricatures, to believe, like in her mind, that's real. That's who these people were.
Yeah.
And it's disgusting across the board. You know what it reminds me of? And I immediately went back to 1915, Birth of a Nation, and the portrayal of the
That's where I went to
in space, right? Like,
yes,
the sex crazed monster.
Exactly.
And it's these caricatures and these depictions of people of color. And you know what? And this is in order to view someone as subhuman, you have to ascribe characteristics that are subhuman.
There you go. You
in
hit
order
the nail
to
on the
give
head.
yourself permission
Exactly.
to not view them as people, because in many instances we aren't.
We're not.
And so, yeah, it is a perfect, and I would use this as a tool to really demonstrate to school districts, this is why you need teachers who get it, who are culturally aware, who are bringing in material that is not only inclusive of the people that they serve, but them themselves should mirror that population as well. And there's a large body of research that supports that.
Yeah.
I agree with you. And I also think too, because when I go out and I do diversity, equity, inclusion for corporations, we need it in schools. We need teachers to go through DEI training because they're not understanding two things. The first story that we saw in relation to kids being on a slave auction, we're talking about, are you kidding me? When Emmett, I was sitting there and I said, why isn't, I had a flashback. Why is it that the law was just put in that you can't hang people? Like we just signed it into law and then this crap happens. And I'm like, the insensitivity to your point, we're a caricature to these people. Anybody who's not of their race has this caricature thing and they kind of play it out in different ways. But I'm going to tell you right now, DEI training is so needed in the school districts with these teachers. That teacher, and I agree with you, I don't think she intentionally set out to be disrespectful to the Native American culture. But I'm going to tell you, honey, if you had even thought about it, you would have known that was a no-no. She put feathers on and
no, sadly, she did think about it. And in her, in
her mind,
in her ill mind,
it was okay.
This was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I was like, I can't even fathom doing it. It's like, coming up with that idea. How do you even fathom doing that? It's like, I'm thinking, who can I call to get to if I'm going to do this?
We're changing
like
the names of these sports teams. Like this isn't even like some esoteric.
Oh, the Redskins are going through it right now, honey.
Known. Like this is not cool.
Yeah.
Like it's harmful. It's disrespectful.
Exactly.
And children, are victimized.
Maybe if she was in her 60s, but she was a young woman, so you have to know about what's going on with the Redskins. You have to know about something about diversity. And I was like, I'm just thinking that and putting this lesson together. Like, how did you? Just completely devoid of the feelings, the audience, the everything. It's like I can't even imagine doing that type of demonstration.
Well, and she cut those feathers out. She actually
she planned it out.
This is her thinking. Like, oh man.
But they did say they were questioning her mental
her stability.
Like, that's what the student said. He said, it's not that. He said, I'm worried about her mental stability because I'm like,
yeah.
Well, I am too. But I'll also say this: 80% of teachers are white women.
Okay, so that's like a little shocking. So I'm gonna get in a few comments from you guys, from our viewers. So Anissa said, "What the heck was that? That teacher crossed the line. Her lesson was offensive and unrelated to the subject matter. 100% true." And then we have Carlito's Way, who says, "Should we change the way we evaluate teachers before they are allowed in the classroom?" And that's something that really maybe perhaps need to be done. But I don't know, how do you evaluate whether somebody is mentally ill? Because during the interview, everybody looks cute. So I tell you what, guys, we're going to go commercial break and we'll be right back. And trust, believe, the next video, if you thought these ripped from the headline, we've got more.
It's too much.
Because you can't believe this is happening in the classrooms. Okay. We'll be right
and this
back.
is our future, to quote the young man.
This is our nation.
Amen.
I really would like to have that guy come on the show. I really like him. Honestly, we got to find that guy. We'll be right back after these commercials. Okay, guys, welcome back. And we're going to go right into our next video. Again, our show format has changed. We're doing Rip from the Headlines, showing you guys information globally of what's happening in education today. And we're going to go to our next story, Rip from the Headlines.
That's racist as shit. How you so little white that you can't understand that nigga is racist for a white man to say for a black man? It's fucking racist. Ian, when you say nigga, you never say nigga. No. Cornfield would never say nigga. Would you say nigga? Would y'all white people say nigga? Fuck no, they wouldn't say nigga. How dare you? Well, dude, you know what a commoditized word is? Explain it to me. That's a word that's used so many times that it doesn't mean it's original. It's used by black people. It's used by everyone. No, you use it. Don't say everyone. The word has become commoditized so that anyone can use it, and it's not a negative connotation. It's a negative ass connotation. For you, say to me, it's negative. Yeah, you hear it in a bunch of songs. Are those people being negative when they use it? By black men. By black men. By black men. What does the word mean when they use it? By friend, by black men. White men don't say friend. Eminem, who's a fucking rapper, he would never say nigga the fucking song. It's offensive. And he said if you say a word, it means friend. And if I say a word, the same word, it means something different. Yes, that's not true. Just the fuck. It's not. It's not true. It's not. It's not if you want the world to move on. If you want this world to be the way it was 50 years ago, then you're true. The more you're wrong, because white people aren't saying nigga. If a white man says nigga, this shit's not moving on. You say nigga in slavery. Nigger, I'm a fucking nigger. I'm a fucking nigger. You put me in slavery. Fuck. Nobody uses that word. Yes, they do. Nobody says nigger. You acting like we're having a conversation. You can say the word, but I can't. You can't say nigger or fucking nigger. Calling somebody. The only reason I'm not fucking racist is my fucking teacher. Don't say that shit. I'm not calling you anything. I don't give a fuck. No one's calling anyone. You said it. Dude. If we're in a class and I'm teaching you, hey, the word nigger is an old word. It's a word, bro. You cannot go through life and act like a word. Fuck you saying that shit. Don't say nigger and nigger. Point blank fucking period. You keep saying it. I can say it. I said it one time. You missed your conversation. This conversation completely. We had a whole assembly. We were talking about after school. And we had assembly after school. 25 times. I can say it. I'm black.
Okay, guys. What's your thoughts?
That was a lot.
I just want to say the mere fact that both of you are speechless concerns me. It's a lot to process, and I get that. So the first thing I'm going to say to you is this. I was very heartbroken that in this day and age, again, that adults, not old adults, we're talking about adults in their 50s. This teacher looks like maybe he's in his 40s or 50s. So he's around my age, and he's not getting that he should not use this word. But the next thing I was offended by is that I understand the young man's anger, but I really was concerned about not his tone, but his words, his choice of words, because I understand he was very angry and he was really trying to communicate, don't do this. And it sounded like he was reaching out to other non-minority students and pointing out, do you guys use this word? Would you ever use it? Would you ever say it? You know, and he was just trying to validate the fact that he was concerned that this is impacting me in a negative way. But my question to you guys is, what do you think about that teacher and how they were responding to that student?
It was horrible. It was, I mean, it was once again the student having to educate the teacher, which obviously this is completely different from the Indian. I'll put her on the show, but the teacher knows the connotation of the word. He was saying something about the word being commoditized, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And him having to reiterate over and over again, asking him not to use the word, and he continued to use the word. And then too, I think that I'm not sure like how this is playing out, but I felt like the black student, he was there alone, like trying to. There was nobody to come to his aid. There was no one to support, what he was saying. And I'm not sure what grade they were in, but
it looked like high school.
Yeah, he was. Okay, but it seemed like he was doing all that he could to explain to someone who was deliberately pretending to be ignorant as to what he was saying, how he was feeling, and and because I've heard that before, but you use it in rap music or whatever, and I have my personal feelings about that, but this is a case where I feel like the teacher knew what he was doing, and it was just epic.
So you felt like he was trying to incite the student, that one particular student, or the students?
The one particular student, because the other ones, I mean, nobody else said anything, and he was telling him like point blank, like it's, and this is what has been touted in our community, that it's okay for us to use the word, but it's not okay for you to use the word, and him trying to explain the difference between that and you referencing the word and me referencing the word is two completely different things. And just to honor that students wish in the classroom, as a member of this classroom, diversity of students, it's just like saying you wouldn't wear a Redskins jersey, or Redskin, you wouldn't want to be offensive to the Indians, you wouldn't want to be offensive to Muslims by coming in with a turban and you're not Muslim. So why are you using this word? Why are you trying to teach me to not be sensitive to this word that is painful?
It is. It's plagued our culture for years. And so Walker, thank you so much for joining us. She said the teacher is failing terribly at de-escalating the situation.
That wasn't his intent. His intent
exactly
was to be provocative. His intent was to be disrespectful, under the guise, as you said, Michael, of ignorance. So first off, that young man is victimized on so many levels, and you called it, Michael. He has no allies. He's advocating for himself, and the best, and hats off to him for not throwing the death.
Oh my God, I'm so proud of him.
Like
so angry.
But think about the harm that's being done to that young man and what he will carry with him for the rest of his life. Right? Because what teachers don't often realize is you have these conversations with these students, and that ridiculous excuse for a human being aside, these conversations are important to these children, and they are life-changing sometimes. And sometimes teachers don't even remember, right? So you have to always understand the potential impact of what you're saying to a child. But this was not a conversation about language. This was an adult disrespecting and bullying a child.
Yes,
that's what this was.
Yeah. And did you see what the young man was wearing? He was wearing a dashiki shirt. So obviously this is part of his regular dress. I'm not assuming that this was African Culture Day. This is maybe something this guy, he really represents his African-American heritage in a way. And he wasn't backing down. But the thing is, the teacher tried to minimize how it impacted him personally. Like, they use it in songs. So if I say it right now, it doesn't.
You know what? That's all purposefully thought out, provocative language used to bully this little boy.
He tried to incite him to say or do something,
and to position him in a way that, and it's man.
Yeah, and it was absolutely horrible. So Carlita's way, she said it seems like the teacher was ill-equipped to handle the students and the passion about the topic itself. She also said, who's the teacher and who's the student? The teacher is acting like he's having a conversation with the peer. How can the students take him seriously? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, they shouldn't. But I'll also say this, and Carlita said something earlier, and it really is about a screening process and hiring the right people, like on the front end, because that teacher, you aren't going to get to think like a certain way.
And
you have to be oriented when you come in and open to learn if you're ignorant. But ultimately, I am just.
Well, let me ask you a question. Based on our first teacher, do you think a lot of teachers are getting through that process because of the shortage, that the people who are doing the hiring are overlooking certain things that may have triggered, this is not going to be a good fit, but I'd rather have them than no one?
Can I say this? And it goes back to a conversation that we started to have earlier, and it was about evaluation. And so evaluation is a little bit different than supporting, monitoring, coaching. There has to be a real clear vision set forth by a leader. And I used to tell my teachers all the time, these little boys, I was one of them. Like, where they come from, I come from. Like, and I'm your boss now. So at this point, treat them like they could one day be somebody's boss and support them in that.
I love that, Shannon.
And the standard was that. Like, say something to one of my kids, I'm taking their side every time.
Yeah.
And don't send them to me to expect them to me to manage your class for you remotely.
Right.
Because they're going to come back to you happier than they were when they left. And that's going to be a problem for you, teacher. But and I love teachers. There's certain teachers that, like these that we've seen today, that are problematic. So let me be clear. Yes. I am a former teacher. I love teachers, but these folks cannot be allowed to get away with this.
Oh, it's been definitely out of control. Walker, thank you so much for joining us again tonight. She says he was definitely being very obtuse. And Carlitos Way says, how do we do better? How do we better equip the teachers before they get to the classroom? In this example, the damage was done, and I agree, it appears to have been intentional by the teacher. How do we stop this from happening? Because again, we go back to the original video that we showed where the teacher says there's a shortage where they're giving up prep periods. They don't have time to plan. It's just a shortage, right? And so are we really doing due diligence to vet these teachers?
So you know what? And let's go back.
Or let me go back. Not even new teachers. Are we allowing bad teachers like the ones we've seen tonight stay because there's a shortage?
I wonder a couple of things. I wonder about
I'm sure that's happening.
I wonder about the free and reduced lunch rates in these schools.
Yeah.
I wonder about the diversity in these schools. And because certain populations, folks aren't watching. Certain populations, you can go in, you can close your door, and I'll see you in June, right?
Yep.
Other ones are checking in, like, so how you doing with this new initiative that we put in place? This new curriculum, this data analysis that we got going on. And I say all that to say this, like, teachers have to know that there's someone there with a clear vision that they can follow, right? And that's going to check in and say, okay, what's going on? And I think that's fair, especially now. But these are just the wrong people for the work. And for some crazy reason, they slip through the cracks. And I don't even know how you get people this clearly. And because you couldn't hide that in an interview.
You could not hide that crazy. That crazy was very apparent crazy. And I don't know what happened. But I'm going to tell you, I definitely applaud that young man, how he handled it. He looked like he's
scarred for life.
Oh, yeah, he is.
We'll carry that with him forever.
But Shannon, you know what? When you say scarred for life, this is either going to do one or two things. And it's either going to damage him where he doesn't feel that he can fulfill what it is that he wants to do, or
he's going to fight. He's articulate. He's
exactly.
I think he'll be okay. But should he have to have resilience in this moment? Especially when there's someone who is paid to support him in being a better young person, right?
Well, I'm going to tell you, my pushback is so huge. This is 2022, and we're still fighting to just be seen as people, just seen and respected. And it blows my mind that this, when we were doing this research and we ran across all of these videos, and by the way, folks, there are thousands of them out there, and we just pulled 5. We can only show 5 every week because we're almost out of time now. But it just blew my mind what's happening in school districts across the world. I mean, Shannon, this young man, it appears that he's in a school district, a suburban school district, where he may be one of few minorities in the school district, because the classroom didn't appear to have any, when he didn't do a shout out to another Black student. He did a shout out to other students and said, would you use it? So it sounded to me like he was the only minority student in that space. And to your point, he had no advocate. He was there alone on his, like, I'm doing this. Like, dude, don't do that. And then, well, wait a minute. How about the guy brought up Eminem? That's the part. I say, what does Eminem have to do with this? You brought in Eminem?
But you know what? And so here's the thing, and we're having this conversation. Well, you know what? No, I'm not even entertaining the teacher's thoughts. But this young man, I am shocked that teacher wasn't hit with a desk.
Because he was so close. And I really applaud him. And that says a lot about how our young men have grown, that they're thinkers. He was very legitimate.
Well, this young man was attempting to reason with an unreasonable person.
Yes. In a non-physical, violent way. When we have adults, and we won't throw any names out there right now, who didn't hear half as much as this young man heard and commenced to slapping the crap out of somebody.
Is this? I knew.
I just want to throw it out there.
I knew we weren't going to escape it.
Go to commercial.
I knew we weren't going to escape it.
And I just want to be clear, whoever's watching, I love that man. I just want to be clear. I love that man as an actor, as a performer, as a business owner, as a global care person. He cares about, the economy and save the world. I love him. Now, what I will say is this young man, like you said, he could have picked up a desk, a book, he could have threw it, but he didn't. He said, look, you need to just stop using it. Don't use it. And then the man tried to change. He went from using it one N word to then putting a GR on it.
Yeah, because once he said it offended me as a teacher,
you should have
stopped doing it.
It's no more conversation. Like,
it's
okay,
you know what? Shouldn't have to go into.
We'll go back there.
Yeah.
Right?
He said, but wait a minute. He put an ER on it. He said, they don't even use it. He said, but you can't do that either. He was like, you can't do that.
Nah, it's yeah,
amazing.
I'm wondering if these people are still in front of kids.
You know what? And I really, honestly, if we had enough time to kind of do the back research to find out what happened to that teacher, I would love to know. But I'm going to tell you, to your point, these people are standing in front of our kids. So when you guys watch this podcast,
and these are the ones that were just caught on film, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. These are the people standing in front of our kids. And we always make the assumption, and I'm going to be totally honest with you. My son went to suburban schools till he went to private school. And then he went back to suburban school his last 2 years of high school. But one of the things that I will say to you, I was one of those parents who was very active. It was very clear, this is my kid, I'm in education. And if you screw with my kid, trust and believe, you will see the full mama bear come out of me. Don't fool with mine. And I mean, it was to the point where my kid was in elementary school, and I'll never forget, they called me on the phone and said, we're going to have to retain Julian because he's not passing. You have those book levels, like level A, E, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? You had to read at those levels to go to the next grade. Mm-hmm. So when Jules got home, I said, hey, midget, what's going on in school? He says, I don't like the teacher. She's racist. I said, what do you mean? What's happening in the classroom? He says, she always picks me last. It's the end of the period, and I only have 2 minutes. And then when I don't finish, she marks me with a 0. I said, okay, not a problem. So I went up there and I went to the school and I said, listen, this is what we're going to do. I need him to be moved to number 5 or number 6 as you go through the reading books so that he has an opportunity to read, because he's saying you're not giving him the opportunity to read. She says, well, no, it's too late for that. I went to the principal, went to the superintendent. My son read every single book level in 1 week. And at the end, he said, I told you I could do it, but you're racist and I never liked you. And the teacher looked at me and I stood there because I made sure that my kid got what he needed. But that's the point. What if I was one of those teachers? What if I was one of those parents who listened to the teacher and didn't advocate for my kid? Right. But it was in that moment I realized my kid is in a school where he's the minority. He's not the majority. He wasn't racist, but the teacher was.
Yeah.
So parents, you got to start thinking about that when your kid is coming home and they're talking to you. You've got to listen to what they're saying, because a lot of what they're saying may be valid, and you need to check into it, and you need to be a strong advocate for your student. Shannon, as we close out, what's your thoughts?
My mother being an advocate for me in school saved my life. And you'll get the story at some point, but if I hadn't had an advocate, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
I love that. Shannon, I'm giving you a virtual hug. All right, I'm hugging you right now. All right, Michael, what's your thoughts before we close out?
From the first story to the last, I think that it's important for parents to definitely be involved. in the lives of your students, in the lives of their children in regards to school, whether it's a teacher who's reporting, one teacher who's reporting that she's being kicked, hit, slapped, or whatever. Check in with your kid. Is this the behavior that you're exemplifying in school? Check in with your children. What projects are you working on? What's going on? Tell me about the books you're reading. Tell me what about the project. Be involved, because the one thread that throughout all these stories was that the Indian student, there was Indian representation. They were handling it. It was being handled by representation. And I think that with the students, with the slave auction and the last student, I felt like, man, if I could only be there to come to his aid, for him to have to hear that. I heard the word once when I was 12 in Georgia, and I never forgot that. And talking, having to talk with my parents about that and how that made me feel. And for him to have to have an altercation with his teacher, like somebody needs to check in with him. So that's my thing: is parents, you have to be involved. You have to listen to your children when they go to school and they tell you, believe them, and fully have it fully investigated.
Thank you so much. And guys, you've seen it tonight, our new series, Ripped from the Headlines. And we'll see you next week with more stories ripped from the headline from classrooms. And these are things that are happening here today, right now. Pay attention and please ask other people to follow and join the conversation. We'll see you next week. Thank you guys for joining me.